Aloha my kako and welcome back to another book review. I am Mama Kitty and today we are going to be reviewing The Battle of the Bookshops by Poppy Alexander. This was an arc that I received from NetGalley, though I am, again, a little bit late, a lot late on the review release, so I apologize for that. If you're new here and you're not sure what an ARC is, it stands for Advanced Reader Copy. And basically I get a free, usually not completely edited version of a novel in exchange for an honest review. So with that, let's just get into it. The Goodreads synopsis is as follows. The cute seaside town of Portneath has been the home of Capelthorne's books for nearly 100 years. The shop, in the heart of a high street that stretches crookedly down the hill from the castle to the sea, may be a tad run down these days, but to Jules Capelthorne, the wonky, dusty world of literary treasures is full of precious childhood memories. When her great-aunt Florence gets too frail to run it alone, Jules ditches her junior publishing job in London and comes home to take the bookshop's 100th birthday a celebration to remember. Jules quickly discovers things are worse than ever. The bookshop is closing to bankruptcy, unlikely to make it to its own centenary celebration, and the lease on the building is up for renewal. With a six-figure sum needed, the future looks bleak. To make matters worse, the owner of the property is the unsufferable Rowan Montbow, from the posh local family who owns half of Portneath. The Montbows and the Capelthornes had feuded for years, and Roman has clearly not improved since he tormented Jules as a child. Fresh from a high-flying career in New York, he is on a mission to shake things up and, unforgivably, proves his point about Capelthornes being a relic of the past by opening a new bookshop directly opposite, a shiny, plate-glass-windowed emporium of books. Jules may not be able to splash the cash on promotions and marketing like the Montbows, but she's got some ideas of her own. Plus, she has a tenacity that may just win the hardest of hearts and the most hopeless of conflicts. Let the battle of the bookshops commence. Okay, so I had a really hard time getting into this book, which was sort of weird for me. Because, you've seen my channel. If you've seen my channel, or know me in any capacity, you know that I am a diehard romance fan. Any iteration of romance, sign me the F up. Battle of the Bookshops? Hell yes. Romeo and Juliet themes? Hell yes. Sign me up. Zero hesitation. All in. The problem was that there were problems. And I had a really, really hard time getting into the story. And so, the book as within its genre, I feel like didn't quite do its job, I guess. But we'll sort of, I guess, get into that. Jules, our leading lady, is fine, I guess, as far as character goes. She's not, I didn't find her particularly interesting. She was just kind of there, she felt very typical romance heroine without any of the interesting flaws, I guess. Gosh. I mean, what I wrote is two sentences, but I feel like I need to get into this a little more. So because it's Romeo and Juliet, right? We have this sort of enemies to lovers situation, and I think I have this later as well, but I'm just gonna get into it now. If I have to repeat myself, I'll repeat myself. But it is there's that attempt at enemies to lovers, but they just aren't quite enemies long enough for that to really work the way that it could have, right? And Jules is, her only flaw is that she is really hung up on a incident that happened to her when she was younger, right, between her and Roman, and that she's just, yeah, okay, so moving on, we have Roman, right, our love interest, and he was fine as well, I guess. He was a little bit more interesting than Jules, I suppose, but it didn't quite feel, I want to say, natural, right? Usually there's this certain amount of connection that I consider enough to the love interest, right? To be interested in the love interest at all. And he's just kind of like, I as some of you may know if you've watched my previous videos, I adore when the male lead is obsessed with the heroine, right? I love that shit. It's great. but in a story that's supposed to be kind of enemies to lover-ish, right? The lack of enemyness is what really kind of he's very, he goes from like to love very quickly. I do like one of his lines, right, is if I have to choose between family and jewels, I pick jewels, right? I do like that. I thought that was really like, oh my gosh, you know, like kicking my feet and giggling kind. Um, but then, you know, later on, he proposes to Jules while sitting on his family tomb. Like, what the fuck is up with that? That's a little spoilery, sorry. It's the exact opposite of a slow burn, right? And I really like slow burns, but I also really like not slow burns. And this is just not a slow burn. it's kind of thing. I just feel like Alexander sort of missed the essence and the nuances required for this sort of enemies or frenemies or acquaintances to lovers slash slow burn. Not slow burn, I mean, sorry. I just feel like they didn't get enough page time as enemies for that to even work. And again, I don't know if that's what she was aiming for. It's totally possible she wasn't aiming for that. That was just very coincidental. But the inconvenient acquaintance thing was sort of a mess. And I honestly had to work really hard not to DNF it in the middle of not to DNF in the middle of the book. If you don't know what a DNF is, it means did not finish. Flo, on the other hand, Jules' great aunt, was awesome. I loved her. She was just the most charismatic old lady, and she really jumped off the page. And I feel like Alexander put a lot of work into her character, right? That she was focused on, drawn out, whatever Alexander did for Flo, she needed to do for Jules and Roman. She's what made me want to keep reading the book, right? To find out what was going to happen to her and her bookshop. I also really liked Charlie. I thought Charlie was a really interesting character. Like, he was a little, not quite 2D, right? But he was definitely still a background character, but he was an interesting background character. And I definitely appreciated his quirkiness and his passion and stuff like that. So the Romeo and Juliet subplot was, like, fine, I guess. I recognize it right away, right? Because how do you have names like Montbeau and Capelthorne and not think Montague and Capulet? You know what I mean? Capulet? I don't know. Anyway, and I think what happened, I think I was just sort of bored. I think I was bored with the way that the Romeo and Juliet trope was introduced, I guess. There wasn't enough fighting is part of it. But I think that boredom comes more from the lack of interest in the leading lady and the messy romance progression than any kind of like lost love for the Shakespearean trope. Because don't get me wrong, I think Romeo and Juliet's a great base plot romance subplot thing. But there's and this is something that people will get wrong all the time, right? There's so much nuance in a Romeo and Juliet subplot. And if you miss the mark, it just doesn't work. And maybe I'm being a bit harsh. I can totally acknowledge that. But the plot just didn't live up to what I was expecting or what I was wanting from this romance novel. And again, don't get me wrong, I love romances of any kind, and this just kind of fell short for me. Overall, it was fine. I gave it a very solid 3 out of 5 stars. Like, I didn't mind it, right? I didn't hate the book. I didn't hate it. It was a fun little read, kind of a little like palate cleanser for being able to move on into, you know, other books that I want to read that are whatever. But I also can't in good conscience anyway, I don't feel good about recommending this book to romance lovers or people who like Shakespearean references and stuff like that. It just doesn't follow through with either of those tropes. But if you end up reading it, please let me know, because I'd love to have a discussion about that kind of stuff. See what you thought about it. Now that I'm caught up, we are going to be taking a little break from arcs. I have a lot of other books that I really want to read, and I can't read an arc at the same time as a pleasure read, because then I'm not paying as much attention to the arc. The next book review is probably going to be the Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I am almost done with it, actually, so hopefully I'll be able to record and get that review out soon. No promises, though. But, you know, make sure you follow the channel and you ring the subscription bell so that you know when that video comes out. As always, my social medias are linked down in the description box, you know, if you'd like to follow me for other kinds of content. Otherwise, adieu, 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 and I'll see you all on the next one. Mwah! Bye!